Hey, everybody. How's it going? Let's see. Who is here today? All right. Hey, Jeff and Karen. Let's see. Here. Let this drone a bit. There we go. Let that just run in the background. Let's see. Jeff and Karen, listening as you drive. Drive safe, Karen. Hey, Mr. Steve. Let's see. Wookie. Will Esplin. Bass Bus. Hey there. Audrey. Who else is floating around in here? Synigons. It is. It's Angry Fruit Salad. That's the color scheme that I believe this is called in the Moog factory. It's called Angry Fruit Salad. Let's see. Wookie asks a question. Why does Fred look like a cupcake? Because I'm a terrible artist. It's a pot, and he's growing out of it. That's the best I can do. Sorry, man. That's the answer, because I'm a bad artist. The Lazarus Pit. Hey there. I see Andy. You made it. Andy, don't take away from... If anybody's got Father's Day celebrations, please go do those instead of watching this stream, okay? If it's Father's Day where you live, it is apparently in the UK, it's Father's Day. It's also Father's Day here. I've done all my Father's Day goodness. My father came over. My son came over. My offspring came over. Let's see. Hey, Doug. Who else is floating around in here? Audrey... Quattro Pagina. Hey there. All right, cool. All right, I tried this the other day. We're going to try it again. And we're going to arbitrarily say, click here to add questions. And I'll try and stay on top of them. All right, see if that works. So there's a question box at the top. I'm looking for better solutions where I won't miss people's questions if they go in. So if you have a question, click on the Q&A thing at the top and add your question. And periodically I will go look at that. So what are we doing today? We are playing with the Matriarch. The Matriarch / modular brouhaha is assembled as far as I feel like taking it. And for now, and I learned a new skill while I was doing this. I'll get to that. I'll tell you a minor story about that. It's not a significant accomplishment, but for me, the path so I had a problem here. I solved the problem. I'll explain about that in a little bit, but we'll see how that goes. So what's going on? So this is the Matriarch. I've featured this in other streams in the past, and I've featured it with Modular and things like that. But this is the constrained final surface area of the Matriarch, basically forever. I am impervious. I've been inoculated to the wiles of Modular. I've done the cycle of accruing modules and then selling them and then accruing them again. I've done that about 3 times over the last 15 years. I don't plan on doing it again. There is some space in this enclosure which might get filled in the future, but the outer bounds of this thing will not be nothing is going to leak out of there. So there's the record of this. If it were to happen in the future, feel free to roast me. But for now, this is the shape of the thing. And it really comes down to my distaste for having to deal with analog gear and tuning and things like that. This is the limit of my willingness to build a system that's dependent on the interaction between components made by different people. So the immunity was hard won, right? My son, Ford, did go to school. He did make it to college. I didn't drain the college fund, but came close. Anyway. All right. So the one thing they don't have is an indicator or some sort of thing that indicates whether there are questions. So periodically, I'm just going to look at that. Nope, nothing yet. Cool. Don't ever get a Solar 42 then. No, I will not be getting a Solar 42. Although there is an audio input in the back of the Matriarch. I am going to probably put a little stool here. Andy, I'll need your recommendations for stools. To put the Lyra 8 on it. I think the Lyra 8 will play nice with this, so we'll try and put it all together there. Okay. So we're going to do that. Steve had your first piano lesson last Thursday. Hey, congratulations. Nice. It's all good. And Doug, you loved the intro. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. That was just me noodling around, right? And Doug asks, what do you think of the Moog Messenger? I think all synths are good synths, man. We've reached the synth nirvana, basically. Every synth is a good synth. You should totally consider it. Buy more synths if you have the means, right? Unless it's Eurorack format. No. I think you can, if it's not for everyone, it's not for me. But I'm not going to tell people not to buy Eurorack. Go have fun with that, then. So the green case is in the closet forever. Yes, the old modular green case is saved for posterity, right? Because that's a family heirloom. But it's literally in the closet in the room next door. So it's all good. So what's happening here? Let's talk about what the point is here. So I like the Matriarch. I think it's an excellent synth. 4 oscillators is the limit on Moog synths for me. If there are 4 analog oscillators and you can individually tune them as we can here, I will tolerate a certain amount of drift and just retune it in as needed. But I wanted to take a Matriarch and add more to it, right? That's kind of the point of the semi-modular stuff. That's why I bought the enclosure, and the idea was that I was going to put 1, maybe 2 noise sources in here, and then a ton of modulation and things for manipulating the sound. So there's some gaps and blanks in here, and we'll build it over time. But all we're doing right now is I've got a channel strip that's playing EQ for me, and basically I've added an oscillator here for doing a sub, which is a large chunk of what you're listening to now. Let me turn it off. So there's the droning Matriarch. Let me turn this back to this. Hang on. Let's make it slower. So the delay is coming from the little Bucket Brigade delay in here, as well as a delay in Ableton, and there's some reverb going on in Ableton as well. But speaking of tuning, I actually like the sound of tuning, that sort of beating that comes in. Let's do this. Let's do a quick tune. With all the beating. Oscillator 3. Sorry. There we go. Oscillator 4. There we go. I am not a great piano player. Keys. I'm a grid player. Anyway, so that's basically the Matriarch. What I've done is I've added another oscillator here to bring in to play the low end. And what I've done is I'm using a little module that takes MIDI. So I'm running the MIDI out of the Matriarch into this module to get one of the things that this thing is called the mutant brains. What it'll do is convert CV to MIDI for 4 notes. It's buggy, and I've complained about it in past streams in that it won't do it won't translate the gates correctly. But I'm using it for a feature it has where it will, given any set of notes, it will always output the voltage for selectively one of them, and you get to choose, and I've chosen play the lowest note. So this module's taking the MIDI and converting it and giving me the voltage of whichever note on the keyboard that I'm holding down is the lowest one, essentially the bottom note. And I'm running that over to this extra oscillator here to give me sort of a sub bass on whatever note is my lowest note. So if I play a chord, right, and I'm playing this low E flat over here, it's the MIDI for those 4 notes is coming out back in, the lowest note's getting picked out, and it's going to this oscillator. So if I bring it in, let's do this. Accentuate it a bit. Takes a bit of balance. So I've only been messing with this for the last day or two. Anyway, so I'm liking that. All right, questions. Let's see. Audrey asks, so the green box is gone? Yep. It's in the closet. Doug says, would it be difficult to change patches quickly on the Matriarch without memory? Yes. Yes, it would. Although there's solutions for that too, right? I mean, some things you can just tweak as you need, right? And it's just a matter of, transitioning from something to something else. And you could do some pretty dramatic changes. So, I mean, that's just muscle memory and learning the instrument, Doug, for the most part. There are modules that you can stick in that will remember voltages. And so you can send some voltages to specific, modulatable parameters, set the voltages on the module, and then hit save, and it will remember those voltages. And then you can change it to something else and hit save. And it's kind of like a preset memory system for bit groups of voltages. But there are significant limitations there. I think the model that I've seen can only hold 3 distinct voltages at any given time, in a snapshot, and that it can have, certain number of snapshots. So, I mean, it's just money. That's a solution you throw money at. But at the end of the day, that's why you should use a synth with presets, So, I mean, it's like whatever you like. Steve asks, is there something behind the lovely etched PCB? Are they spacers? These are all spacers. They're just blanks. And let's see. Yeah, I pulled them off of Etsy, so I mentioned that the other day. Andy asks, would you consider mounting your Metropolis in the Matriarch case? I have done that before. I would consider it, except I'm having way too much fun with the Metropolis in the other Dallas rig. So I don't know. It would be easier for me just to take it, put the box over here on the side somewhere, and just use it there as opposed to mounting it. But you can. I have in the past. And I might do it again. Doug asks, how are you playing the low notes from the Matriarch and the high notes from the eurorack? It's the other way around. The lowest note is coming from the eurorack, and that's this module here. It's basically listening to all the MIDI notes I'm playing, picking the lowest one, and I'm sending it to the to this oscillator here. Right. Hang on one sec. Right, so if I let go of that lowest note, it immediately jumps up to the highest note. So if so this E flat is what's being played by the bass oscillator. As soon as I play a note that's lower than it, it will jump down to it. So, yeah, see you there, Biscuit. Hello. Steve asks, what's the interval of the lowest note from its trigger? Can you ask that question a different way, Steve? What do you mean? So basically all of the notes are going out through MIDI to this module, and it's selecting whichever one is the lowest MIDI note and sending the voltage for that to the oscillator. So let me know what you mean by that question. So any questions that didn't make it in there? Andy says, I'd never really looked into the Matriarch that much until yesterday. And I think it would, you think it would rather save up for one of these than get the new Messenger. The Messenger is a monophonic synth, right? So, and this one's paraphonic 4 parts, which is different, right? I have the Matriarch. I tried to get a Moog from each of the families of Moogs. So from the mother sort of grouping of synths, I took the flagship, right? And then I've got a mini, and then from the sub family, sub fatty, sub everything, subsequent sub 37, I have a subsequent 37. And then from the Taurus line, I have a Minotaur because I simply can't afford to buy an actual Taurus. They're just too expensive. And so now that Moog has moved on and it's owned by InMusic, the Messenger is, I don't know what the pedigree of the Messenger is, or the Muse, right? The Muse's pedigree feels like it's partially technology from the Moog 1 being retasked in the Muse, which is good because I was sad when the Moog 1 died or, was discontinued because there's some really great ideas in there and some really useful things from a panel perspective, and I'm so panel centric. So those live on the Muse, and that's good. And the Messenger, I think, is also leveraging some of that. But the Messenger is definitely, a monophonic synth, and I don't really need another one of those. So, yeah, you would use it as a monosynth. That's cool. Hey, let's see who else popped in. Helical Coil, greetings. Easy Biscuit. Who else is there? Medlogify. What's up? Go back to the questions. Steve asks, because you rephrased the question, how many semitones are between the lowest note and the low note that plays? It's whatever you tune the oscillator to, right? So this is a C, if this is a C2, I can independently tune the sub oscillator to be whatever octave I want it to be in. So it doesn't have to be a sub. It could be, somewhere else. You could make it the highest note, and you can change that on the Mutant Brain, the MIDI to CV converter as well. You could say, give me the highest note, or give me the last played note, or there's a bunch of variants that you can do there. Audrey asks, is the wavefolding module in your rack? Yeah, they're right here. You want to hear one? We can screw around with those. I haven't touched them yet. Here, let's turn off the sub. And let's kill, All right, so there's oscillator 1. Let's make it a triangle. All right. Oh, you're going to make me find cables. Okay, hold on. All right. So wave out from oscillator 1. Let's run it in the input on this wave folder. Let's run the out of the wave folder back into oscillator 1 input. All right. All right, Audrey. Let's see. Let's leave the filter all the way open. Here, let's attach an LFO to that wave folder here. Fold. Where do we want to feed this from? We'll feed it from here. I need a longer cable to do that. Hang on a sec. Will this reach? Fold. Yeah. Okay. All right. And I want to, let's do this. Let's run it through an attenuator. We'll pull that from there. Don't need that. Come here, you. All right. So what is this? Again, I don't do module reviews. So this is a FLD, a Fold 6 from, I don't even know who the manufacturer this is because I don't recognize the logo at the bottom. It's a Wavefolder VCA. So if you close the fold down all the way, it shuts the VCA. Let's do this. So let's close the filter a bit. Let's bring the sub back in. I hope that makes you happy, Audrey. All right. Let me check the questions. Yeah. Doug asks, let's see. I remember a quote that said, "Rings into clouds forever." What does that mean? So Rings and Clouds are two modules from a company called Mutable Instruments that has closed its doors but released all of its modules into the community, basically. So people can make clones of those modules. And if you look at VCV Rack, I think there's a full set of replicas in there. And Rings and Clouds was an ambience generator. I don't remember, honestly. It's been so long, and I did not own Rings. So I don't remember. I think Rings was maybe physical modeling or maybe an FM thing. If anyone knows, put it in the chat. I don't remember. But if you search for Mutable Instruments Rings, you'll get all the details of that. And you search for Mutable Instruments Clouds. It was a part of the meta, I guess you could say, right? Hey, Mean Mole, welcome aboard. You ask, hello, if you had to choose one, which UE VST synth would you pick for making Berlin School? The Tangerine Dream kind with soft plucks and spacey soundscapes, Zebra 2, Hive, Diva, all of the above. It really doesn't matter. So the sounds for Berlin School are very simple sounds. You know, there's nothing stopping you from doing, you know, using crazy, very, I want to say harmonically complex sounds, right? But at the end of a day, a plucked sine wave is enough to, you know, do the Berlin School. Part of it's the cadence and the texture, not cadence, part of it's the texture and the sort of timbres you get from the Berlin School sort of techniques and approaches, right? Delay and reverb, dotted eighth delays. If you want that, you said Tangerine Dream. If you want early Tangerine Dream, you're definitely talking like basic waveforms, nothing fancy, right? So Zebra 2, Hive, Diva, those are all capable of making the sounds. So there isn't one that's going to be better. I suppose I would say the one that uses the least CPU. And if you're going to do Tangerine Dream like from the late 80s, early 90s, where they were doing a lot of digital synths, right, then you'll want something like a wavetable synth or something like that. Or if you're trying to, you know, replicate them, go get a software or hardware clone of the PPG wave stuff, right? Those are the paths you can take if you want to sound that, you know, just like them. But you can do whatever you want. It really has to do with the techniques and the patterns you're using. I have a bunch of tutorial videos on the channel for some of those techniques, but there's lots of others, and there are lots of other Berlin School sort of YouTubers. So, you know, look around and see what you find. But you can always, you know, drop me a note or something if you're stuck on something. Happy to help. Welcome to the channel. Let's see. Pigments is life. Nice biscuit. I like Pigments. That is also an excellent synth. Hang on while I read the chat here. Oh, Music Smurf. Good to see you again. Just a short hello. That's fine. Thank you for coming in. It's all good. Do you have a mixer for CV? Dr. Felix asks. Yeah, I've got two Dope quad VCAs, which will do mixing here, although I'm not using them right now. Also, the IntelliGel Mix-Up is a CV mixer if you need. And do I have any other mixers in here? No, not right now. So like I said, so on Saturday, I think it was Saturday, maybe it was Friday, I did like a 2.5 hour live stream of me taking this apart and putting it back together. And I talked a lot about my philosophy for what we're doing here and the dangers of modulargrid.net. So Modular Grid is a fantastic tool, and I love it. The problem, at least for me, with Modular Grid is it allows you to design systems that are infinite, right? You can always add another row. You can always add more modules, make it bigger, make it taller, whatever. And what I have done over the last 15 years of using Modular Grid when it was available was to build a large system and fill every possible space and design the instrument that I was trying to make. And down that pathway for me is madness, because it never quite, due to tolerances and how physical hardware works, it never quite gets to where I want it to be. And so I'm taking a different approach this time. I'm saying, okay, Matriarch is semi-modular. It is a good tool for exploring individual modules and saying, what can you do to make the Matriarch more interesting? That's sort of the approach I'm taking. So what's happening in here now is going to be modulation sources in addition to what's already on the Matriarch. So more LFOs. I don't have any envelope generators in here yet, but I'm going to be looking at them as I need them. I'm currently I've got a couple Braids here. I'll tell you a story about this Braids. I've had an exciting adventure yesterday, but I'll get to that. But I'm going to use these Braids actually as LFOs, not as oscillators. And then I've got a gate sequencer that'll get in here to drive some patterny stuff. And then to Andy's point, Synchrotron earlier mentioned, are you going to put a sequencer in the rack? And I could, but there's a perfectly adequate sequencer. It's not amazing, but the ARP sequencer in the Matriarch is pretty nice. I have another sequencer waiting in the wings, the Metropolix, which is much more powerful than the integrated sequencer. But the point, going back to philosophy, is I'm putting just a few things in. That's why there's all these blanks and gaps and stuff. And then understanding what I want to do with it as far as its relation to the Matriarch. And then once a month, I'm going to do one of the live streams each month will be about the Matriarch. So this is the one for June. The next week's live stream is going to be with some other synths. I will get back to this one in July, right? So every 4 weeks is the cycle, and this will be one of those weeks. And we'll see where we go. Okay. Let's see. Just let me catch up on the chat here. All right, people are talking about pigments, talking about VCV. VCV is a great tool. I would highly recommend people getting into VCV. It's a very cost-effective way of doing it. All right, and no more questions. Cool. So let me tell you a quick story about Braids here. Okay, so I really like the Braids oscillator. It's my favorite oscillator. It's digital. It's very capable. Many different wave sources, things like that. What I discovered on Saturday is that at its lowest setting, it will not go down into deep LFO rates. It sort of is. It stops and can't go any lower, which was sort of like a roadblock for me at the end of the stream on Saturday, or the most recent stream. I was like, I'd reached a point where it's like detuned as low as it'll go. I'd set the range setting for the extended range, sacrificing 1 volt per octave control. And basically I couldn't get it any lower. But this is a stock Braids. This one is one that I've modified now. So I spent the weekend screwing around with the firmware for the Braids. Like I said, the Mutable Instruments author, whose name slips my mind now, she released all of the code for all of these instruments, for these modules. And so I pulled down the code for the firmware and started sniffing around in it and going, okay, is there a relatively easy way for me to extend the range of the Braids to LFO rates? And there is. And so over the weekend, I was basically pulling down the code, doing the modification, and then sort of getting the environment up and running to build the firmware, compile it all down, convert it into a form that I could load onto the module. And that's what I did yesterday morning. And it works perfectly fine. So now what I sacrifice is I totally hacked it in there, right? I'm not a DSP guy. You show me DSP code in C++ and I'm like, I have no idea what's happening here. But as far as setting ranges and the settings in the C++ code around like what pitches are the default, and I literally just forced the thing down. I said, okay, you used to think your default pitch was around 440. I want it to be lower than that. Let's drop it 4 octaves. And so what I've done is this oscillator is now no longer capable of playing. It's sort of like the Minotaur synthesizer. It's been forced down, and it is no longer capable of playing things in the higher registers, right? So it's a total hack job, but this is working now. And what that buys me is this has some freaky waveforms when you take them down into LFO rates. Like it's got a bunch of wavetables and folded waves, which I can do all the plain stock LFO stuff based on what's in the Matriarch, and I've got an extra LFO over here, and I may invest in more because you really can't have too much modulation. But now this one has some crazy stuff, so let's wire some of that up. Hey, Jeff. Yeah, so basically, is it Emily? What's the name? Here, let me look in the chat. Maybe one of you told me. What is the name of the author who did Mutable Instruments? I cannot remember her name now. Is it Emily? I'm looking through the chat, seeing if any of you mentioned it. Zooming through here. Hang on. All right, nobody mentioned it. I can't remember her name. Yeah, it's Emily, and it's like I want to say it's French. It's Pina, something like that. Gillette. Yeah, Emily Gillette. Thank you, Jeff. Yeah, so if you go to her GitHub page for all the mutable instrument stuff. The entire thing is published as a development environment ready to be pulled down. You need a VirtualBox. There's a couple prereqs. You got to install VirtualBox and a couple things, but basically you do a git clone, pull down her entire environment for every mutable instruments module, go modify the code, and then run the makefile command that generates the wave file full of firmware that you then load in here. It's super easy. The struggle I had is it will not work. The VirtualBox stuff doesn't work on M1 Macs correctly. So I had to go dig up an old iMac out of the closet that still had an Intel processor in it, and it worked flawlessly then. So I was super happy about that. Yeah, so now I can continue to hack this, and I'll go pull, Jeff or Labs Lab, somebody who's more C++ oriented can, I'll start drilling you guys on the Discord for other tweaks I want to do to the firmware here. Anyway. So let's talk about what did I accomplish. So let's use one of these. Let's use one of these weird waveforms for our LFO. Let's attach it to. We'll do filter frequency instead of wavefolding. All right. So I'm gonna kill our wavefolded patch there, Audrey. So I hope that demonstration was okay for you. All right. So I want to run. Something real simple. I had a mult. There it is. Where'd it go? All right, here's our, we're going to use this LFO. So this is, okay, so the experiment we're doing here is the weird Braids LFO shapes, okay? And we're going to run that through the attenuator. So we have a certain amount of control there. And then we're going to run that back into a, I just had a mult cable in my hand, but I seem to have dropped it. Oh, there it is. Hang on a sec. I am in a cockpit. I'm bolted into and surrounded by gear and cameras and all of that stuff. And so I literally can't get up off of my stool to get anything that I happen to drop. So, robot claw, baby. So I'm 53. For Christmas a couple years ago, my wife gave me a robot claw, and I gave her one too. There's no shame. No shame. I'm like, all right, fine. All right, so we've got our little mult cable here. And we're going to take the output of that attenuator, and we're going to run it around into our filter frequency. Plain and simple. I don't patch as quickly or as efficiently as synchrotron does, but get the job done eventually. All right, so we're in our linear wavetable. Here is the setting. That's coming down into our attenuverter and then out back into the filter. All right, so let's turn off the sub, and we'll turn back up our all right. And let's do sawtooth waves so we're nice and bright harmonics. We'll turn all the oscillators back up here. So let's get a wave shape. Actually, let's do, there's a pulse train oscillator on here. Let's flip over to that. Hang on a second. Which sounds like, where are you? There's literally too many different kinds of oscillators in the Braids. All right. Hang on a second. Down, back. back out. All right, I'll come back to it. I was playing with the pulse train earlier, but now it's not working for me. So hold on a second. All right, so a folded wave. So this is a sine wave that we're folding, or a triangle. Turn off the effects too. It's muting it, I'm sort of making it messy. Hold on. Turn off our delay here. Ah, sorry. And do this too. So this is, if you've ever looked at the waveform of a sine wave as it gets folded, right? It goes from being a little hump to being a hump with a divot in the middle, to being a hump with a divot in the middle of the little wiggly waves on the sides of it. So you can get a regular repeating pattern, but they're different shapes, right? Let's fold it a little further. Let's go back to that pulse train. And then this oscillator has a trig input, so you can reset it. So you could reset it on key press. So that's just an example. I have not had time to go through all of the various waveforms in the Braids and start saying, okay, what does this act like as an LFO? But I'm very proud of myself that I went in and hacked the firmware to take it down to LFO levels. So I'm feeling good about that. I'm a bit chuffed, as they say. So, all right, let's see. Any questions? Merp. All right, let's see. Doug asks, do you prefer voltage modular or VCV? I have everything that Cherry makes. So as far as software of modulars, again, in the stream on Saturday, I was saying why I don't use VCV rack. There's nothing wrong with it. It works fine. But I prefer, oh shoot, who makes it? I prefer a different vendor for software modular from, I think Applied Acoustic Systems from AAS, and I cannot remember what it's called. So anyway, I prefer theirs. So, but that's just me. They're all good. Yeah. Use whatever you want. You know, if the price is right. Let's see who else has popped in here. Hey, Quasar, Studio 8 FX. Greetings. If I missed you when you popped in, sorry about that. Looking for tags real quick. I don't see any. Do I like the Take 5? I do like the Take 5. I used it for about 15 minutes at KnobCon. And then Taskboy 3000 has a Take 5 that I got to fiddle with a few times. Multiphonics from AAS Modular. Thank you, Will. I prefer their modular system just because it's I like systems that are not not made by a mass of many developers. I prefer a system that's sort of designed to work within itself. Now that's making a lot of assumptions that AAS software development effort is of a higher level of system engineering than what's happening in the community around VCV. So that's a big trust on my part, but I'm just following that. I like AAS's stuff. I have many of their software tools, and their multiphonics was useful. I liked it. I've owned it for years, and they keep updating it and adding more stuff, and so I just keep buying it, doing the expansions. So. But please use VCV Rack if that's for you. That's an excellent tool. So, let's see. Any other things here? Yeah, the Take 5's good. Yeah, Multiphonics. I like Multiphonics. Their CV system integrates really easily into Ableton as far as an audio effect. So you can have a modular effects rack, which is nice. I know you could do that with VCV as well, but it's just trivially easy with Multiphonics. And they've got a few modules that I find very interesting. So they have a delay. It's called the object delay, which is a really interesting sort of physical modeling delay. It's hard to describe. It's super fun. Check it out on their website if you want. No shill, not a shill. Let's see. Soft2 Modular is supposed to be good, but it's expensive. Yeah, I looked at their stuff a few years ago and opted not to. Anyway, so this is something we're going to explore more, right? So I will explore the using the Braids as an LFO. I need to go through and find, because there are so many possible oscillator wave shapes in there. It's easy to it's like just a lot of work to get it all sort of situated and understand. Like, I'm gonna have to take my notepad and start going through and playing with things and check their ranges and then write down, okay, this one's useful in this configuration, this one's useful in this other configuration. I've given myself basically a summer project, basically, is to go through and do that. So, all right, let's see where we're at now. In the meantime, we'll put our plain old triangle, nice and predictable, on it. And for those of you who came in late, this is the Matriarch with an additional sub oscillator added in. So that was one of the other things that we've done. So there's no sub. This is the, what is it? Solid Snake, right? This is the Escape from New York, John Carpenter. All right, let's see. What else? What time is it? Oh, it's 3 o'clock already. Wow, that hour went by really fast. Let me look for any last questions. Nope. All right. So the state of the world is this. We're setting up the studio with stations, right? So we've got the Korg Moog section using Ableton Push you've seen a few weeks ago. That's the thing I use most often. Last week's stream was the Dallas rig using the Launchpad, a couple of Metropolixes, the Iridium, and the Nord Lead. So that's another sort of station. This Matriarch with the Modular is the third station. Next week is going to be the flagship station. I've got a Hydrasynth, a Nordwave 2, a Summit, and a third wave. I'm going to set up that station between now and next Sunday and make that yet another little cockpit in the studio. I don't know what I'm going to do there for that may run into Ableton and just do live looping with Ableton using the flagships. And so that'll be sort of station 4. And of those 4 stations over the stream from now on, I'm just going to run through each of them every week. So next week's flagships, the week after that's going to be Bobby and the Corgis. The week after that, it'll be back to Dallas, then back to the Matriarch, et cetera, et cetera. That's the process, because I'm trying to figure out how to stream and not be bored. Right? So, I mean, not that you guys aren't entertaining, but I just needed to break it up a bit. I wasn't really looking forward to streaming every weekend during the summer, but that keeps it interesting, and that's sort of the plan. All right. My Logify says I've had prejudgment on Take 5. I thought it would lack a lot compared to the bigger ones, but apparently it doesn't. So talk to Garen M, my Logify. I don't know if Garen, he was driving actually, so he's not, he's probably unable to respond. Garen M shows up in the chat. If you search for Garen M on YouTube, Garen streams on Monday nights. So tomorrow night, Garen will do a stream around 8 p.m. US Eastern, and he's a big fan of the Take 5, or was. I'm not sure if he still has it. I think he does. So you can talk to him at length. Andy says, it does sound great, and I know that software emulations are equally fab, but I know which I prefer. That's fine, Andy. You've got a significant investment in Modular, Mr. Synchrotron, so I understand. Yeah. John Carpenter was into I think he did most of the soundtracks for all his films. So I don't know if he did The Thing. Did John Carpenter do the music for The Thing as well? Quattro Pagina. I didn't know there was an album called Lost Soundtracks. I'll have to check it out. Cool. All right. Well, with that, it is Father's Day. Happy Father's Day for everyone if they celebrate that in your country on this date, right? Entirely possible that you don't, or it's on some other date. But it's a very hallmark holiday for me. I really don't care much about things like Father's Day, right? I mean, I love my father, right? Don't get me wrong. And I like it when my kid comes and visits, and both of those happen today. But, my wife is locked in every holiday. If you could buy a greeting card, she's in. So anyway. All right. I think that's about it. I'm going to call it a day. I'm going to shut her down. UK Father's Day is today. All right. So it's the same as here. Thanks, Awkward Teeth and Hair. It's called Lost Themes, Quattro Pagina. Okay. I will look for it. And I think I'm good. I'm going to shut down the stream. I will talk to you all next week, or I'll see you on the Discord, or I'll see you in other people's streams. I missed Andy's this morning. I just couldn't. I slept in. It's this game. I'm playing this game in my spare time called Claire Obscure. It's a PlayStation game. It's an RPG, and it's keeping me up till 1 a.m. every night. It's crazy. Anyway, thanks everyone. I'll see you next time. Have a good one. Later.